Chosen one, someone just kicked themselves so hard they cannot stand straight because it is balls to the walls and jaw to the floor. Someone just realized who you are, and they are gobsmacked. This person is sitting with their stomach in their throat, realizing they completely underestimated your power and the divine fire you carry. By the time this reckoning concludes, you will understand that your win was never about luck, but about what you are fundamentally built from. The ground beneath your feet has shifted permanently because the person who tried to diminish you is now spectacularly and irreversibly stunned by the magnitude of your true identity. This person looked at you and made a quiet, deliberate decision. Maybe it was even unconscious, but they made it. The decision was this: I know what this person is worth, and it is less than what they think. Understand what kind of person makes that calculation. It is not someone with genuine confidence. Genuinely confident people do not assess those around them and assign lower value. That is a survival mechanism, not a power move. It is what someone does when they are chained to the opinions of others, obsessed with how they appear to the outside world, desperate to be seen in a specific light by their crowd. The only way they can maintain that image is to keep the people close to them positioned slightly below them. Always you were supposed to stay in the lane they assigned you. They had opinions about how you dressed, how you carried yourself, how you talked, what you did, and where you came from. They had a whole committee's worth of judgment about everything you were and everything you were not. None of it had anything to do with who you actually are. It had everything to do with how you reflected on them. You were always a variable in their image equation. You were never simply a person to them. Here is the miscalculation that is going to cost them everything. They looked at someone carrying a crown they had not yet claimed and saw a page. They looked at the full version of you and decided it was a rough draft. So they treated you accordingly, kept you at the bottom of the priority list, put their reputation first, put the crowd's opinion first, and put you last. They were not worried about losing you. They had assessed the situation, and they were certain that certainty is the first mistake, and it is the one that undoes everything. You cannot permanently suppress something chosen. If you already feel that in your spirit, leave a like and comment 1111 right now. That is not just for me, it pushes this message to another chosen one who is still in the suppression phase and doesn't know what is about to happen for them. You can redirect it, you can delay it, you can pile noise opinions and manufacture doubt on top of it. But suppression requires continuous energy, and that energy was being poured entirely into their image, their performance, and their crowd management. The moment their attention slipped even slightly, everything they had been holding down started to rise, and it was always going to keep rising until it reached its natural level. That level, chosen one, is far higher than they ever allowed themselves to imagine. Here is the part that is going to sting a little. So stay with it because the sting matters. You let them do it. Not because you were foolish and not because you were weak. You let it happen because you are someone who believes in people, who gives generously, who shows up fully, who cares in that deep, inconvenient, pour everything you have way that not everyone is capable of. That extraordinary quality, the one other people feel the moment they are around you, is exactly what got taken advantage of. Think about what was actually happening. Every drop of your strength, your focus, your creative energy, and your emotional reserves was flowing in one direction. Your energy went into managing this person, worrying about them, protecting them from the version of you that made them uncomfortable, and making yourself smaller so their comfort zone stayed intact. You were turning your lighthouse into a nightlight because they found the full beam too bright. You were at the bottom of their priority list, and they were at the top of yours. The entire time this was happening, your actual path was waiting for you. Your purpose was sitting there patiently, knowing you would eventually show up. Your gifts were underdeveloped because the person who should have been your strongest supporter was quietly and consistently redirecting your energy away from your becoming and toward their maintenance. This is not a minor grievance. This is someone who cost you genuine momentum, not just the connection, but whole seasons of your becoming. Nothing you lost was actually lost. Every gift that got suppressed is still there. Every seed of purpose that did not get watered is still in the ground, dormant, not dead, and waiting. What happens when something that has been suppressed finally gets the conditions it needs to grow? It explodes. Remember that word because we are coming back to it. The drain was not always dramatic. Sometimes it was the accumulation of small moments. Every time you edited yourself before speaking, every time you chose the safer version of your truth, every time you swallowed your excitement, because you had learned it made this person uncomfortable. Those micro moments of self-suppression, stacked on top of each other, produced a version of you operating at half capacity. And you are still remarkable at half capacity. That is how extraordinary you actually are. Full capacity is what is coming now. And comment amen to let your Father know your connection. You knew. Not everything, and not all at once, but that thing in your gut, that low hum of wrongness you kept turning down, that internal alarm you silenced again and again because you did not want it to be right. That signal was never wrong. Not once. Your intuition was reading the situation correctly the entire time. You were the one who kept overriding it. Why? Because you give people the benefit of the doubt. You believe in the best version of a person and keep showing up for that version, even when the actual version keeps letting you down. Somewhere along the way, you learned that genuine care requires patience and forgiveness, so you applied all of that generosity to a situation that did not deserve it. You made the red flags beige, and that is not a character flaw. It is the shadow side of your greatest strength, the same quality that makes you extraordinary. Your capacity for grace and for seeing potential in people got weaponized against you here. You extended it to someone who had no intention of building their own potential, and who was perfectly comfortable staying exactly as they were, as long as you stayed exactly where they needed you to be. And when you tried to trust your gut, when you started to speak up and name what you were feeling, what happened? It came back on you. Suddenly your perception was the problem. Your needs were too much. Your doubts were framed as evidence of your instability, rather than evidence of their pattern. That is the signature move of someone who is hiding something. People who operate with integrity do not need you to doubt yourself. They want you to be clear. They welcome your perception because their private behavior matches their public face. But someone whose private behavior is completely different from what they perform publicly needs the people closest to them to be foggy and uncertain, just confused enough that the two versions of events never fully collide. Your clarity was their greatest threat, not your anger, not your pain, your grounded, sovereign, clear-eyed clarity. That is what they worked hardest to dismantle, because as long as you were cloudy, they were safe. And then you did something that changed the entire game. You got quiet, not defeated, but quiet. There is a world of difference between those two things, and that difference is everything. At some point you stopped reacting, you stopped explaining yourself, stopped defending your choices, stopped trying to make someone understand what they had no interest in understanding, and stopped performing your pain for an audience that had already decided what role you were playing. You went still, and in that stillness, something began that they did not see coming. Your silence terrified them because everything else you could do they had a counter for. Your anger, they could mirror it back or use it to make you look unstable. Your tears, they could spin those into proof of your volatility. Your words, they could edit them, misrepresent them, and pull them out of context. But your calm, your composed, sovereign, absolutely certain calm, had no counter available to them. Your face said everything your mouth would not. Your eyes were doing the quiet work of a final evaluation, not a frantic or emotional reckoning, but a clear one, the kind that has already reached its conclusion and is simply waiting for everything else to catch up. They could feel the assessment happening, and they knew they were not passing. You have probably noticed a lot of chosen one channels on YouTube have stopped publishing. Videos pulled, voices silenced. The mainstream media is cracking down on us, but we will not give up our voice. That is exactly why I am putting you onto something real. Check it through the link in the description and the pinned comment. I built this because I was done watching chosen ones get dragged through betrayal, isolation and attacks while their enemies strutted around unchecked. I want to help you accelerate the speed of your divine justice and step fully into your purpose. And the beauty of it, you don't even have to lift a finger. Checking it now to stay connected to your Father. Here is what silence signals to someone whose power depends on your reaction. It signals that you have stopped needing their approval, that you have stepped completely outside the game, and that you are no longer manageable by their tactics. For someone whose entire sense of self is built on managing how others perceive them, a person they can no longer manage is the most destabilizing thing imaginable. The silence was not just you going quiet, it was the first tremor, the first visible crack in the structure they had built around your identity. Under the surface, everything was already shifting. The avalanche had started, and they did not know it yet. Here is what that silence was doing on your side of the equation. It was conserving energy. Every bit of energy you had been spending on explaining, defending, and reacting stayed inside you instead. It accumulated and compounded. Silence for someone like you is not emptiness. It is a reservoir refilling. The longer you held that calm, the more you had, the clearer you became. The clearer you became, the more inevitable the next move was, not as revenge, not as a performance, but as the natural consequence of a person who has become very full again, deciding where to direct all of that overflow. That overflow was about to go somewhere they could not ignore. That calm you built in the silence, it needs an anchor. Something you see every morning before the noise starts, before the world tries to pull you back into the old frequency. I created a set of blessing cards for exactly this moment in your journey. Each one carries a divine reminder of who you actually are and what was always written for you. You print them. You print them out for you on the days the run voice gets quiet. They are in the description. This person had picked me energy running all the way through them. They needed to be chosen, to be seen as the right one, the impressive one, the one whose version of events everyone accepted without question. Their self-worth was not internal. It was rented from other people's opinions, and that rent was perpetually due. Without collecting it continuously, the whole structure wobbled, so they were always performing, always managing their image, always making sure the crowd had the right impression. When you stopped clapping, when you stepped out of their audience entirely, they did not get reflective. They did not sit quietly and ask what they could have done differently. Instead, they recruited. We went to their circle, the audience they had been cultivating, and they told their version of events. In that version, you were the problem. You were the difficult one, the complicated one, the one who was too much. We needed someone to confirm that they were still the right one, still the one who should be chosen. Enough people in their circle, people who had only ever received their version, gave them exactly that confirmation. So they got comfortable again, validated again, and back in the rhythm of the performance. And you were over there, quiet, healing, choosing yourself and building. You were not competing with them. You were not watching them. You had already turned away entirely. And that is the move they could not comprehend. A competitor they can handle, because someone angling for the same recognition is familiar territory. But someone who has completely left the arena, someone who does not want the crowd, someone who has found a platform so much bigger that the old performance does not even register as relevant anymore. That is not something they have a play for. Pick-me energy has one specific Achilles heel. It is deeply sensitive to being genuinely ignored. Surviving anger is possible. Surviving rejection is possible, as long as it comes with noise, because noise confirms you still matter enough to provoke a reaction. What is unsurvivable is someone who genuinely stopped thinking about them, someone who redirected their entire focus toward their own life and simply had no space left for the old obsession. That was you. You did not move on as a tactic. You moved on because your life got so full, so aligned and so genuinely interesting that there was no space left. When they felt the absence of your attention like a physical withdrawal they had not anticipated, that was the beginning of the jitteriness, the sleeplessness, and the reaching. You were not trying to win any war. You had already moved to an entirely different country. The creativity that had been managed into mediocrity started to fly. The confidence that had been systematically chipped away started to rebuild, this time with reinforced foundations instead of the original material. The vision you had for your life, the one that kept getting minimized and surrounded by too many outside opinions, started to take real shape. The kind of shape you can point to and say, "That is mine. I built that, and that is what I am capable of when nobody is redirecting my energy." You started creating. You started showing up in spaces that mattered. You started speaking, building, and producing, and the work carried a quality that only comes from someone operating from genuine freedom. Not performing freedom. Actual freedom. The kind where your energy belongs entirely to you. Here is the thing about authentic power. It does not announce itself, and it does not need to. There is something unmistakable about a person who has done the real internal work, who walked through darkness and came out the other side, not broken, but forged. There is a presence to it that cannot be manufactured or performed. You got there, not immediately, not all at once, but you got there. Opportunities started arriving. The right people started finding you. The recognition that had been withheld, not just by this person but by yourself, started coming. With every piece of it, your foundation got more solid and your knowing got more certain. Here is what made your rise impossible to dismiss or attribute to luck. It was not surface level, and it was not aesthetic. It was structural. The change showed up in how you spoke, in what you were no longer willing to accept, in the quality of the people gravitating toward you, and in the work itself. You were not just doing better, you were operating at a fundamentally different level. People who had known the previous version of you, the dimmed and redirected version, could see the difference with complete clarity. The evidence pointed in one direction. You had grown deliberately and significantly in the exact direction that someone had spent considerable energy trying to steer you away from. The confusion that person felt when they started to notice, it hardened fast into something far more volatile: your truth. Not the version they told, but your actual truth, the real account of what happened, who did what and why. Here is the fatal vulnerability of someone who controls a narrative with precision, manages their image with obsessive care, and builds a performance so carefully that the crowd never questions it. They are terrified of the unmanaged truth. They can manage a rumor. They can spin a conversation. They can discredit one voice. But what they cannot contain is a truth being told by you, in your own words, through your own work, to an audience they have no relationship with, and therefore no influence over. What they cannot handle is the kind of truth that travels, the kind that gets written down, recorded, or expressed through something creative with an honesty so precise it is undeniable. The kind that does not need to name names to tell everything. You are someone who processes through expression. You always have been. The experiences you have lived through, the depth of what you felt and survived, that is not inert material. That is fuel. That is the raw material of something extraordinary. A body of work that speaks to people who have been through something similar and resonates in a way that manufactured, performance-based output never can. When that truth travels, when it lands in front of people who cannot be curated or controlled by this person, there is nothing left for them to do. They cannot discredit the work without revealing their guilt. They cannot dismiss it without making themselves look exactly like the person being described. They cannot reach that audience or reframe how those people perceive them. The truth does not need to be loud to be effective. The quieter and more precise it is, the more damage it does to a carefully maintained performance. A loud accusation can be shouted down, but a calm, clear, articulately expressed truth cannot. It sits, it stays, it gets passed forward, and finds people at the exact moment they need it. Every person it reaches who thinks I know exactly what this is describing becomes part of an audience that was always beyond this person's reach. Your truth is not a weapon wielded in anger. It is a light switched on, and once on, it illuminates everything, including the things that only survived because they were kept in the dark. Everything they did to you in private, they hid in public. That is the covert move, and that is the signature of someone who operates this way. To the outside audience, they were the reasonable one, the stable one, the one whose version of events made their behavior look like a response rather than an origin. But privately, there were targeted moves to destabilize you, moves designed to make you doubt yourself, cloud your sense of what was real, and create just enough fog around your perception that the two versions of events would never fully collide. They would never acknowledge this because their entire system depends on the gap between who they perform in public and who they actually are in private. As long as that gap stayed sealed, they were safe. Gaps seal when the other person stays quiet. They seal when that person doubts themselves too much to speak clearly and confidently. They seal when that person is still running on empty and too depleted to tell the full account. You are not depleted anymore. You are not quiet in the way that once served them. You are quiet in the powerful way gathering resources, building your foundation, finding your voice, and preparing something far more effective than any argument you could have made in the heat of the moment. The moment that gap cracks, the moment the private reality makes contact with the public performance, everything built around their image starts to shake. That cracking is already underway, and they can feel it. That is the jittery energy. That is the sleeplessness. That is the reaching back, trying to hook into your attention one more time and provoke a reaction. Because as long as you are reacting, you are not building. And what you are building is the one thing they have always needed to stay buried. It is not buried anymore. Consider what it costs them to keep that gap sealed. Maintaining two versions of yourself, constantly calculating who knows what, and who can hear which version of events, is exhausting, full-time work. All of that calculation was aimed at one target: keeping your perspective from being believed, keeping your voice from having a platform, and keeping the real account from getting out. And here you are with a platform, with your voice, with clarity, and with the evidence of your lived experience written across every achievement you have produced. The energy spent trying to suppress you was wasted, because you could not be suppressed permanently, not you. This person was going through their routine, maintaining the performance, managing the image, running the same patterns with the same crowd, and then something reached them, something they saw, read, or heard about you. Something that did not match the version of you they had been presenting to their audience. As fact, maybe it was an achievement, something you built, created, or were publicly recognized for. Maybe it was your name spoken with admiration by someone whose opinion they valued. Maybe it was the work itself, the thing you made from the raw material of your truth, landing in front of people who were moved by it, confirming everything you always knew you were capable of. Whatever the form, the message was the same. You are not where they left you. You are not small. You are not struggling. You are not the version of you they packaged and presented to their circle as justification for how they treated you. You are ascending. You are fully, visibly, and undeniably becoming the person you always were, underneath everything that got piled on top of you. The calculation they made about you, that foundational decision about your worth, is wrong, completely, catastrophically, and irrevocably wrong. They know it now in the way that hits the body before it reaches the brain, the gut drop, the sudden stillness, the moment where everything around them gets slightly too loud because the version of events they have been narrating to themselves and everyone around them has just been publicly disproven by the very person the narrative was built around. That is the gobsmacked moment, jar to the floor. That is the sound of someone kicking themselves harder than you ever could have kicked them. They cannot even be legitimately angry at you. You did not engineer this moment. You did not seek it out. You simply removed yourself from the drain and kept moving forward. You became exactly what you were always going to become. Once that energy was redirected back to yourself, you showed up as yourself and let the work speak. This gobsmacked moment is not something you did to them. It is the direct result of what they did to themselves the moment they decided to underestimate you. At its core, this is a collision between the version of you they packaged and sold and the version of you that was building the entire time. Between the ceiling they tried to install over your potential and the height you were always going to reach. You did not crash through that ceiling dramatically. You simply kept growing until it was so far below where you were standing that it ceased to be relevant. Every decision they made based on the wrong assessment. Every time they chose performance over you, every person they convinced to see you as less, all of it is sitting in front of them right now like a debt they did not know was accumulating, and it is due. Now let's talk about what happens after the jaw comes back up off the floor. It does come up, and what replaces the shock is something hotter, less controlled, and much harder for them to contain. They are furious, not the loud kind necessarily, but the covert kind, the simmering kind that looks for an outlet. They want to clap back. They want to get into your energy and pull out something that looks like instability, something they can use as proof that their original narrative was right all along. But you are not giving them that. You have already learned the most important lesson in all of this. You say less, you react less. Your calm is not indifference. Your calm is sovereignty. Every non-reaction you offer is a statement louder than any argument. Every achievement that lands while you remain completely unbothered is more devastating than any confrontation could ever be. Right now they are replaying the past, running calculations on a loop, going through every decision and every moment they chose the wrong thing over you, and seeing it all in the full light of who you turned out to be. That loop is not comfortable. Meanwhile, you are rested. You are focused. You are already working on the next thing. You are not thinking about them anywhere near as much as they are thinking about you. That gap between how much of their energy is pointed at you versus how little of yours is pointed at them is the most accurate measure of where each of you currently stands. You are not in competition with them. You never were. Gloating is for people who needed to win. You did not need to win. You needed to get free, and free is exactly where you are. Their fury changes nothing. Let them be furious. Let them try every angle to pull you back down to the frequency they remember you operating at. None of it is going to work. Because you are not going back, not for any version of connection that cost you your becoming. That fury is not really about you either. It is about the mirror. Your clarity, your rising and your fully realized presence are holding up a reflection they cannot escape. And that reflection shows them the direct consequence of every choice they made, every time they chose image over integrity, every time they refused accountability and repeated the same pattern. They are seeing a clear comparison now, and it is not flattering to their side of it. You did not create their stagnation. They chose it repeatedly, and with full awareness of what growth required. The evidence of that choice is now simply, undeniably visible. You do not need to say a single word. You are already saying everything. This gobsmacked moment is not the ceiling. It is the doorway. It is the first visible evidence that the seeds you planted in the dark, in the quiet, in the seasons when nobody was watching and nobody was applauding, are finally breaking through the surface. What is coming for you is extraordinary. There is an opportunity on the way that this person is going to hear about and will not be able to breathe through something significant that puts your name in conversations they cannot steer, and in front of audiences they cannot curate. What you have been through, the truth you carried, the weight of it, and the clarity you arrived at on the other side is not just your healing. It is medicine. Medicine travels. It gets passed from one person to the next. It finds people who are still inside the version of the situation you already survived. And it does two things at once. It helps them, and it expands you. This is what this person will never have, because they chose performance over authenticity. They built their image on external opinion rather than internal truth. Performances have a shelf life. They need a stage, an audience, and constant maintenance, and the moment any of those elements shifts, the whole construction deflates. Something built on truth is different, something built on genuine growth, and the lived, earned experience of someone who went through the fire and kept going. That compounds. It becomes more solid over time, more valuable, and more irrefutable, because the world is flooded with performances and starving for something real. You are real. The harvest from real never runs out. The harvest is not only material, it is also relational. If this is the first time you have found this channel, subscribe. Not because I need the numbers, because what is coming next for you needs a voice that speaks to it directly, and I am not done talking to you yet. The quality of the people now finding you, who recognize your value immediately without requiring proof, who show up for you the way you always showed up for others, that is a harvest too. It cannot be manufactured through performance. You can only attract that quality of connection by being genuinely, fully, and unapologetically yourself, which is exactly what you are now. Every new connection and every open door at your current frequency is confirmation. Confirmation that the world does not agree with the valuation that person placed on you. That confirmation shows up quietly and consistently, building the case you always suspected was true, but were made to doubt. You are always worth it. You do not need to be in the right situation to become who you are. You do not need the right approval, the right audience, or the right conditions to access your own power. Your power is not conditional on anyone choosing you, seeing you, or validating your worth. It was always there. It will always be there. The moment you stopped performing your value for someone who had already decided not to recognize it, you were free. And the moment you were free, you became unstoppable. That is what they are sitting with right now. The full weight of having let something unstoppable walk right out of their life because they were too consumed with managing appearances to see what was actually standing in front of them. The gobsmacked moment happening to them right now is not accidental, and it is not luck. It is the inevitable result of a straightforward equation. You did the work, they did not. You took accountability, they refused it. You chose growth when it was uncomfortable. They chose comfort when it was costing them everything. Yours is compounding, theirs is deflating. That dynamic is no longer a matter of effort. It is a matter of foundation. What you built in the quiet, in the seasons when no one was watching, does not shake when someone jittery and furious tries to destabilize it. That fire they brought, the drain, the opinions, the fog, the covert moves, the narrative they built around your name, none of it touched the real you. It only reached the version of you that was dimmed by proximity to it. The real you was always underneath, whole and intact and waiting. You do not come out of this damaged. This is not a comeback. Comebacks belong to people who lost something. What you are experiencing is a return. The return of someone who was always exactly where they were supposed to be, moving through exactly what they were meant to move through, and arriving exactly on schedule. You are not coming back, you are arriving. And the jaw on the floor, the gut drop, the person kicking themselves and wondering how they got this so catastrophically wrong, that is the sound of the universe correcting the record. Balls to the walls, jaw to the floor. They just realized who you are. And it is exactly as devastating for them as it is magnificent for you. Welcome to your season, chosen one. If you felt something reading this, if your spirit recognized its own story in these words, I want you to have something tangible to carry forward. I made a set of printable blessing cards, divine affirmations, and spoken blessings designed for chosen ones walking through exactly this chapter. Print one for your mirror, your desk, your wall. Hand one to someone you know is fighting the same fight quietly. These words on a screen will scroll away. A card on your wall stays. Link is the first thing in the description and the pinned comment. Now go, you have a harvest to collect.